All right, how many people are engineers and scientists? Okay, so what's a hypothesis to you guys? Educated guess. What else? It's an assumption to be proven or disproven. So there's something out there that you could be correct about or not. But what's the idea of a hypothesis if you came up with the hypothesis? Is there something behind it? Come on, speak. Well, you're going to go out and test it, but what's behind that hypothesis? Your own experience, right? What else is behind that hypothesis? Other than your experience? What's that? There's a little bit of a bias, but that bias comes from your inner faith that you're doing the right thing. Do you guys agree with that? So everything you're pursuing comes from this idea that what I'm doing now is probably correct. Okay? How many times have you heard the story that entrepreneurs believe they had the better mousetrap and they didn't make it? Have you heard this story before? Right? Somebody give me an example of an entrepreneur that's, oh, I've had a great idea and this is the best thing since sliced bread. But they didn't win the race. Somebody else beat them. You have anything, Jasmine? You're smiling. No? How about Microsoft? Are you guys old enough to remember when Microsoft started? Yes? Yes? Are there any CS majors in here? Right? That's okay. So, he's over in Connecticut participating. He was trying to call my cell phone while I was standing out there in the lobby. So, if you think about this, when Microsoft started, do you know the history behind it? Okay, they both stole some stuff from Xerox, but they didn't really steal it. Xerox didn't know what to do with it. So they kind of gave it away. Where did the original, what was Microsoft's first product? Does anybody remember this? Come on, the CS majors. No? They might have. I've heard stuff like that too. Their first product, they bought it from IBM. It was called DOS. What does DOS stand for? Do you remember this? It was a disk operating system. So most of your computers don't even have a disk in them, right? But the only software that competed, like there were lots of startups. There was Commodore 64. Do you guys remember Commodore? Yes? Sounds familiar. Did you know that, you guys know the brand Radio Shack? They had it was called TRS DOS, again, disk operating system. The Microsoft got rid of the disk operating system because their engineers, they sold it to Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer for almost nothing. No rights, they kept no rights to it, just gave it to them. They were glad to get rid of it. Okay? So what happened is, it's a lesson in who knows the market or who knows the customer better. And that's the first, kind of real example in my lifetime of somebody who knew something and had a serious economic advantage because of it. So Steve Blank, what was the story with Steve Blank, the guy in the videos? Do you remember what his company was that he made all the mistakes with? Did he say it in the videos or not? He didn't? Okay. So he had a couple of startup companies, and he learned from his mistakes that you have to talk to people. Have you seen this image before? Yeah? A couple of you have. I use it in some of my classes. What's the idea with lean? Have you heard of lean before? Have you taken it in an engineering class? Okay, you're going to take this at RPI. Lean, the concept is that you do things in the most efficient way, either time-wise or cash-wise or people-wise. The idea with lean is to do it in the most efficient way. This is an image that I've shown. You guys have seen this before, right? So this is an image of how business plans used to run. We would teach you, I sat in this very classroom for this class a long time ago, but I was taught how to write a business plan. Okay? Were you guys born in the 1990s, a show of hands? Yeah, okay, so around the decade you guys were born, I was in this classroom. And they were teaching us how to do this. And then we'd go get a lot of this. And then some people went out and bought this right away as soon as they did. Right? Did you have a customer at this point? Had you ever talked, when you wrote a business plan, had you ever talked to a customer? No. You would do market research, and this predated Google. So you actually had to go to the library and do market research and sit there and look through books and reports. All right? So what would happen is all these things. I was taught how to do all these things, as was Steve Blank, the guy in the videos. The problem was that we hadn't talked to a single person. So like IBM with the DOS software, it wasn't called MS-DOS at the time, it was just DOS. So IBM had this software that they had no idea what it was worth because they hadn't talked to anybody. But it didn't fit somebody's business plan, so it was okay for them to part ways with it. Their loss turned out to be Microsoft's gain. Okay? So what I want to get into is this. Steve Blank made himself famous by talking about the first thing you need to do is talk to a customer. Forget everything else. Don't build a product till you talk to a customer. That's what we're going to do for the next 5 weeks. Okay, so those videos I had you watch were about just talking to people. Now those of you that have sat through my classes, how do I teach this? That talking to customers is like, it's like dating. You guys going to let them carry the load here? I know there's more of you that have sat through my classes. Okay? It's like dating. So you're going to go out and you're going to talk to people without mentioning your product. Is this hard, Ian?
If you realize it?
Yeah. When you don't realize it, so I'm picking on Ian a little bit, but his first conversations, he practiced them with me. And the first thing he did was tell me all the product features. Okay? So how many of you have been on a date where the other person just sat there and you could not wait to move on? Has it happened? Right? This is what happens when entrepreneurs talk to investors too. They come in and all they want to do is talk about themselves. What I want you to do is something very, very different. I want you to talk to potential customers and just listen. Right? So the purpose of using Launchpad Central is so every time you talk to somebody, you can log the interviews. Did you see how you can log an interview yet? Did Paige go through that or point out where that is yet? Okay, I can show you before we leave. But the point is, I want you to listen. I think that there is a case to be made for you do have to tell them about what you're doing, but you never do it on the first date. You don't even do it on the second date. It's saved for like the fourth or fifth date. When somebody finally asks you, so this is great, you're trying to understand the market, I really appreciate this. What are you trying to do? Now, are they interested in you when they ask that question? Yes or no? Yeah. You've listened to them enough that they're now interested in you. That's the end game. This is what really happened in some of the startups. Have you seen these images before on like sitcoms or movies or something like this? Where everything's falling apart. What do you think happens when everything's falling apart? What did the team do? They fight. They blame each other, okay? And the reality is that if you had talked to a customer early on and just listened, you would know exactly what you need to do. Now, here's something that's really important. You may discover that what you want to do doesn't fit the market. What do I want you to do when that happens? Do I want you to plow on and keep going forward? Pivot. What's that? Make your product fit the market. Okay? This serves you well whether you do a startup or you go into a larger corporation. If you start talking to people and you realize your vision doesn't match what they need, the idea of this customer discovery process is you simply pivot to fit the market. Does this make sense? Right? So you may still be doing software, but not the same software you started out with. Okay, so these are famous examples from the field of failed companies. I know some of you have seen these before, so don't give them away. Have you heard of etoys.com? No? eToys is very, very famous. Those of you that have sat through this before, do you remember how much money eToys raised? Yeah. Yeah, they started out and they raised in private money like $200 million. And then went public, so they did an initial public offering because they had a great business plan, right? And had a market cap, I don't have the numbers with me, I'm going to say it was around $2 or $3 billion. And the idea was that they were going to take the way you bought a toy, and it's all going to be like Amazon. It's going to be online. Right? So they're going to take out the intermediaries so you get the toy cheaper. What was the problem with this model? Were you guys kids at one point? Show of hands. Have you bought a toy before? Can you tell me your personal experience of how you bought a toy? Somebody? What's that? How did you pick it, though? Yeah. What's that? In person. Right? You had to see it, touch it. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, you'd see it somewhere. So what was the problem with the eToys model? Could you touch the toy? No. They were out of business in 20 months. After being worth about their peak in 2000 of, I think it was $2 billion. 11 billion? Yeah. $11 billion in 20 months. So how much money did they lose a month in value? We're at RPI. You're all smart enough to do this. What do you got? Just about $500 million a month. Does that sound crazy? But this is what happens when you don't talk to customers. The other picture up there is the newest airplane. What is it? What is that plane? 787. Does anybody remember the problems with this plane? Okay, that's what it became famous for. Remember it landed in Heathrow and the batteries caught on fire? Yes or no? Does everybody remember this? Okay, so there was a bigger problem than that. Boeing actually had a brilliant idea. I want to sell this plane to 20 or 30 countries around the world, right? So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to involve them in the production of the aircraft so that Japan is making part of the tail of the airplane. The Netherlands is making part of the fuselage or empennage. France is making part of the wing. Do you get the gist of what's happening here? So if you're going to buy this airplane and you're a domestic airplane manufacturer, do you think your country's best interests are served by buying an airplane where you're making the parts to it? Yes or no? Yeah. So it sounds like a great idea. We're all on board. The problem was Boeing never listened to the engineers. And they were trying to tell them how hard it was to integrate these things and make them fit together perfectly. And that's ultimately what happened with that plane. So all the parts arrived in Seattle, where they were putting it together, and they didn't fit. Does that make sense? So it's a different kind of not talking to your customers. You didn't listen to the people inside your organization who were trying to tell you you had a problem. What's the one on the very left there? Have you seen that one before? It's the most famous recent example. It was the Affordable Care Act, the ACA. Has everybody heard of this? So what website is that then? You guys are healthcare.gov, right? Does anybody remember what happened when it launched? It crashed. It didn't work. People didn't use it because they hadn't talked to people that buy health insurance about how do you buy health insurance when you're at work. Like if you went home and you all asked your parents how they bought health insurance, they could tell you, oh, we're offered options, and I compare them. I look on a table and I compare, and I see what's best for our family. Does that make sense? Well, they didn't match that customer process, so people couldn't use it. Even though the information was probably there, it wasn't in a format that people could use it, so people didn't use it. All right? So when you talk to people, you're learning about how they want to use it. All right. I'm going to skip through this in the interest of time. And a lot of these things ended up in failure. So what I want to do for a few minutes, because we're here for another 30 minutes, I want to go through practice customer interviews with you guys. Come on over here. You guys are going to be students. And I'm going to come in and introduce myself and I'm going to do a customer interview where you are the customers.
Okay.
All right. So what am I going to, they're going to be students. So pick something that I'm going to be doing customer discovery on. You guys got to pick something for me. Something that students would be good as an interview. A new coffee shop. Okay? I'm going to pick something that's good. I want to pick something that's like has a mass appeal. So I could do, so give me something that I could sell to students that would have a mass appeal. What is it? Jasmine, backpack, good. So my backpack is going to have special features for students. What's it going to have on it? Somebody give me some ideas. Integrated headphones. That's nice. How about, I need 2 more product features. Oh, I could charge the phone from the backpack. That's a good one. It's waterproof. Okay, so I'm going to add to charging the phone, it's got a solar array on the back to charge the battery in the backpack. Ooh, nice. Just like the General Motors car. So I'm thinking big now. I got a big idea. Okay? So now I'm going to do the customer interview like a traditional engineer. Is that okay? Nobody's going to be offended? Okay. Hi, I'm Matt.
I'm Tony.
Tony?
Dan.
Dan, good to meet you guys. So thanks for taking the time to be interviewed. I'm working on a startup company, and I'm making a backpack that's going to be the end-all of backpacks. It's going to be the best backpack of all time. It's going to be Wi-Fi capable. It's going to charge your phone. It's going to be solar powered. Even better, it's going to be waterproof, so you could take it hiking, you could take it skiing, you could take it wherever you want. It's going to do everything you ever need as a college student. What do you think about that idea?
Sounds cool.
Sounds cool?
Kind of interesting, but honestly, the big problem I have is I'm kind of worried about the laptops that we're required to buy. And I'm kind of worried that if I drop my laptop, if I drop the backpack, the laptop will break. So does your backpack take that into account?
Nah, it doesn't really. It doesn't really. I mean, but your laptop's in there. Maybe we could charge the laptop. We could do that sort of thing for you. What kind of laptop is it?
It's a Lenovo. I have the 420 model.
Oh, we only make it to work with Macs. I should talk to you later about that. How about you? You said it sounded like a good idea?
It sounds cool, but it's a lot of technology that you know, you can carry around so much technology. Maybe my backpack shouldn't have all that extra features. Kind of gimmicky almost.
Do you guys think you would buy one if I was selling it?
I feel like if you add those features, it'll just get really, really expensive.
Out of control?
Yeah,
All right.
something that's just all gimmicky stuff. Maybe I don't need that kind of stuff. I already have a laptop. I already have a phone. I need to charge it. I'm always walking by outlets. I can plug in there and sit down and do some work or something.
Okay. Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did I do there? What did I just do? No, I know you know the answer. You can't answer. You can't either. I did. I went through a lot of detail. No, Sylvia, you can't answer either. I tried to sell. Did you hear it? Okay. What was your take? Were you almost embarrassed for them when I was doing that? Right? Was it a bit like watching a sitcom that you were like, oh my God, those poor, right? I can't believe Professor Cusack is doing that. Right? That's the way you should feel. Because that's the way people feel when entrepreneurs approach them and just sell. Right? So now I'm going to try a different approach. Does anybody have anything to add? I'm looking for funny observations. This is the spot where you say them. Anything else? Perfect. Perfect. How many people here are human beings that like to be nice to others? So if somebody asks you if it's a good idea, what's the probability that you're going to say, that's a terrible idea? Come on, we're engineers. I know you can do probability here. What's that probability? It's the limit as something approaches zero, whatever it is, right? Would you agree with that? You're not going to hurt my feelings. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Like they're just doing an interview. If you just say yes and you walk away, who cares, right? All right. So they call it customer engagement. You want to engage them in dialogue. What was your name? Spencer. Thanks. Thanks, Spencer. So that's exactly what you want to do, is you want to engage in dialogue. Don't ask them if they want to buy it, if they like the idea. Of course they're going to say yes. Right? Now, if I try a different approach, let me try this one. Does this look suspiciously like Steve Blank's videos? Yes? All that's missing is we're not at his house in his library. That's all that's missing. All right. So, hi, I'm Matt.
I'm Tony.
Tony, nice to meet you.
Dan.
Dan, nice to meet you. Where are you guys students at?
Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York.
Nice. What are you studying?
I'm studying mechanical engineering and product design.
Oh, nice.
Primarily mechanical engineering.
I'm a mechanical engineer too, so
Okay.
that's good to hear. Yeah, yeah. So, what year are you at RPI?
I'm a second semester senior.
Second semester senior?
Second semester junior.
Okay. So you're going to graduate this year?
Yep, May.
Nice, nice. And are you entering a co-op this summer?
I'm looking, but I'm looking at co-term as well, so possibly getting a master's degree and finishing a semester later.
Great, great, great. So what are your favorite parts about being at RPI?
Well, honestly,
No laughing.
I like the exposure to some of the opportunities we have here to do unique things with technology. For example, I'm involved in some research projects this semester in some interesting fields, and so I think that RPI provides a unique opportunity to do those sorts of things.
Wow, fantastic. Do you get that as a junior already?
No, my favorite part is hockey.
Hockey? Okay, the sports.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, they got a good program. Do you know they won the championship in the 1980s?
Adam Oates.
Yeah. I was here when that happened, so that's how old I am. So, I wanted to ask, like, I know it's really cold right now, but I wanted to ask, like, what are your biggest challenges at RPI outside of the cold? So what are some of your biggest challenges as a student at RPI?
Well, I would say staying engaged in some of these classrooms. I think a lot of our facilities are a little bit older, and so sometimes it can be kind of hard to engage all the students, and especially I know one of our classrooms, Rick, it's 212, can be a little bit difficult to stay awake because it's so hot, and much less really get something out of the lecture.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that's a good point. I've been a teacher in some of those classrooms.
I just in general, lectures are not something I learn well in, so staying engaged in pretty much all lectures is a struggle for me. So I have to learn most of the stuff on my own and try to apply that to tests and stuff like that.
Can you record things in the lectures to try and listen to them later?
I've never thought of trying that.
Well, you should talk to Kelly then. How about, like, if you've got to learn this stuff on your own, do you guys carry a ton of stuff around while you're doing that?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
You do? How far are the buildings apart?
Well, I live in a residence hall that's pretty much the top of the hill, so I walk about as far as you can to get to class, pretty much all the way across campus.
Wow, you the same?
Yeah, and it doesn't help that we're on a hill.
Oh, I'm sorry I cut you off. Carrying?
Carrying a lot of textbooks and my laptop, all that stuff. It's pretty heavy.
Nice. So what do you use to carry that stuff around, especially on a cold day like today?
Well, RPI actually gave us a backpack at the beginning of when we came in, and so I've actually been using that same backpack for the last 4 years.
Nice. Who made that backpack that it lasted 4 years?
I actually couldn't tell you.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Just know I have a big coffee stain on it, but it still works fine.
Oh, great. Great, great. All right, now I'm going to stop right here. Did I just learn something right there? What did I just learn? They're meeting their needs already. And who gave them the backpack? RPI. So if I want to sell something to RPI students, how do I got to sell it to RPI students? Through RPI. Do you follow the difference? Did you feel like we were engaging in legitimate conversation there? Could you picture yourself answering some of those questions? When I said, what are some of the biggest challenges, I had to imagine that all of you wanted to raise your hand and say, oh, I got something, right? So do you follow how this goes? Did I talk at all about my backpack idea? No. The biggest problem you now have is how to end the conversation. But you have just learned some significant information. Okay? Does anybody want to ask about their specific idea? I need you to ask now. How would I do this interview? I promise you everybody sitting in this room is thinking the same thing. How am I going to do this and not talk about my product? I let you just make something up and manage not to talk about it. So ask me specifically. Okay. I'm not a big fan personally of writing anything up. Okay. My first interview, like picture a date that if somebody walked up to you and they had a checklist. There's a movie and the woman did it and I can't think of the movie right now. Yeah. But the idea is don't bring a list to the first date. But the ugly truth, that's it. She brought the checklist there, right? So I think that it's probably a bad idea to bring a list to the first interview because it's like the first date. You want it to be engaging, okay? Now, to make sure you get something out of it, since you can't bring a list, what's the other idea I want you to do when you do an interview? What's that? No, you cannot direct them. So what I want you to do, no, Keegan, I just put you on the spot, sorry. So what I want to suggest is never do an interview by yourself. Never ever do the first interview by yourself. You're only doing 30 of them, so make sure there's 2 of you. Somebody tell me why I want you to never do it by yourself. Different points of view. Have you ever seen somebody like you've gone to the movies and you walk out of the movie and you're like, oh, that was really great. And somebody in the crowd is like, that was the worst movie I've ever seen. Has it happened? Yeah. Okay. So there's that difference in perspective comes from a difference in background, personal experience, where they grew up. It comes from everywhere. And so if you do an interview with no script, make sure there's at least two of you there. Because the person that's talking, that's engaging in the conversation and the flow, is not recording things in their head. So, for example, if Sylvia was doing the interview, you would just be listening and going, oh, that's good. We got to make sure we find out who at RPI buys those backpacks and where they buy them from. Do you follow the logic here? Okay, so the rule I want you to write down is never do an interview by myself. Write this down. Never do an interview by myself. It's a terrible idea. I promise you I've done this with doctors, surgeons, professors, and they all get the hang of it after the second or third interview. That somebody's talking and somebody's listening. You can't really write it down. I had a couple of teams last spring be able to record the interviews. They use the voice recorder on their cell phones. You have to ask people if that's okay. You can't do that anonymously. Okay? Never ever record an interview without the person acknowledging that that's okay. But if they do let you do it, it's a great way to go back, play it back, and then check your internal biases against the other person. Okay? Now you may be saying, why do I have to do this for a stupid contest? Has that thought occurred to you yet? Yes? It's not about the contest. Yeah, I want everybody in here to win. It's about how you do it when you leave RPI. I want you to be better than the people next to you for the same job you're applying to. And there are a lot of people now using customer discovery across their entire company. Who's the biggest example? Sarah Beth, I know you know the answer. Who's the biggest example of a company that just moved? Their entire organization is now going to use customer discovery for product development. It's a Fortune 10 company. That's how big they are. They started right here in Schenectady, New York. GE. GE is now implementing FastWorks across the board. So the skills that you're going to get out of this contest, I absolutely want you to put them on their resume. Got it? Okay? So it has real value, even if you don't do a startup. If you do a startup, I want to work with you. We at the Severino Center, we work with startups all the time. Okay? But either way you go, there's value in this. All right, we have 15 minutes left. I'm done with my part of this. Do you guys have any questions for me? So when I was in Austin, Texas, I took a group of doctors and we walked into Breckenridge Medical Center and just started at, you know, the person at the front desk in a hospital that's like the volunteer, like the candy striper kind of person, and started there. So they were feeling like, okay, I want to get right in and meet real people. So we started there and just said, hey, we're, you know, a team from RPI doing blah, blah, blah. We'd like to talk to surgeons that are doing this. And other teams are more comfortable talking to a familiar face for the first couple. So it depends on the individual. You got to be careful because I think a year and a half ago, the first time I did this, I had a team where the one guy went and talked to all his fraternity brothers. Okay, well that's good because you'll get a great number of interviews. But what do you think, that was there stories started to be, did the responses start to be the same? Yeah. So after 3 or 4 of those, it became not so useful to keep talking to the same fraternity brothers, right? So we started not counting those interviews towards the 30. Does that make sense? You'll know. Because remember, the value is what you learn when you talk to them. Not to click off, oh, I got 30. The value is what you learn. That's the best question so far. Thank you for asking. Always introduce yourself as a student at RPI, especially if you're local. So I had a team. How many people are here from Professor Swearzy's class? Okay. So I had a team last fall from Professor Swearzy's class that I said, well, you guys really need to talk to surgeons, and there's a hospital right up the road. She walked right, the team, 2 women, walked right up to Samaritan Hospital here, right up the road, walked in and followed my story from Austin, Texas, found the person at the front desk and said, hey, I'm a student at RPI. I'm doing research for customer discovery for a project this semester, and I just need to talk to people and learn what their daily routine is like, their challenges and things that work and things that don't work. I'm not selling anything, I just need to learn. Is there anybody that would talk to me? Does that answer your question? So you want to make sure you identify, you're honest, and you're clear. You're not selling. You're just learning. And I can't say that I haven't had anyone say no to that, because I have had one person say no. They were surgeon, they were busy. I just can't talk to you right now. Okay. But otherwise it works well. So should you do drop-in interviews or try and set some up ahead of time? Well, if you're trying to get out on the dating scene, do you do a little bit of both? Yeah? So you kind of do a mix and be opportunistic, you know? So if you're going to go out and you're going to try and meet people that are fans of hockey, you're going to need to go to a game. You're going to need to go to the pub some night and get people watching, you know, whoever's playing that night. The other thing that works real well is to send an email. So if you want to get to interview people, so I had a team that was doing something with insurance companies, and they just would not take a drop-in. Absolutely wouldn't take a drop-in. So they just had to email and set up appointments. But what was interesting about that is once they had 3 interviews set up at the insurance company, they ended up spending the whole day. Because, what is your name? Brandon. They had an interview with Brandon, Sarah Beth, and Sylvia, and walked in and did this, and then they said, oh, you got to talk to this guy, you got to talk to this guy, you got to talk to her. Do you follow what happened? So there's a mix of what will happen. But the insurance company absolutely wouldn't let them in the door without an appointment. So, yeah, there are issues like that. So this is their canvas. Some real quick lessons learned here. I want you to focus on these 2 boxes. So when you watch 2 and 3, they're going to emphasize what's called product market fit, which is going to fit in these 2 boxes. And these are your 2 connectors of those 2. All right, see this button here? Can you see it down at the bottom? These are where your customer interviews go. All right, so here's what I want you to put. You get interview details and key insights. Interview details is where you write down everything they said that you can remember. That's where you should be writing this down. Interview details. Write down whatever you can remember. Key insights are what when the 2 of you do an interview, key insights are where you guys say, okay, I learned something. What did I learn from the backpack that would be my key insight? RPI supplies it. We don't know the brand, but we want to find it. And I got to find out who buys them for RPI. Do you follow the logic here? So as you as you do learn things, put them up here. Now, what we have some of the people do is VP. What's that stand for? Not vice president. Value proposition, right? So this VP is where you're going to put down what it relates to. Does that make sense? All right. If you have any questions about this, feel free to ask. When you are set up your Canvas, you will be able to see other people's Canvas in interviews. So if you have questions, like you say, okay, I got to do an interview, this person's in my class, I'm just going to ask them what they did, you can see each other's material if you allow it. So this is like a social networking sort of a platform. All right? But we'll get this out to you today.